for you, how do you sit down? Like, what's your creative process? Do you sit down kind of like, I'm going to write a novel, empty blinking cursor on a white screen? Is that typically how you approach your work, or do you usually have an idea in mind before you get started?
No, I almost always have an idea in mind, just because if I sit down like that, it will just, I'll kind of fall into the same sort of like things that I always do. And there's always, kind of like themes, but I'll sort of like, it'll take longer and it'll just turn out shittier. So I usually have some sort of like, at least idea or direction. And it could be pretty small and it could be pretty vague, but it's sort of like, well, I've never tried, doing a building with this shape, or I've never tried, doing this. And lately it's been much more sort of like specific in terms of like direction or idea or this or that. And it'll kind of evolve as I'm doing it. But usually I'll go on like Pinterest or ArtStation or something like that and kind of like look at just other work. Like, I'm very inspired by other people's work, and just look at, a bunch of different work for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or something like that, and try and kind of like, get some sort of like idea. Or I'll go to Twitter and see what's trending and like, oh, could I play off of some like thing that's happening right now, this or that. So it's very much trying to like look at what's going on in the day. Is there something news story that I'm inspired by, or this or that, or something going on in the world?
Someone hiding in their bunker.
Yeah, and something like that. And that's what I think is fun too, because I feel like now, like, I almost look at it as like some of the stuff that I do is almost like a political cartoonist, where it's sort of like, okay, I'm reacting to like what just happened today or, yesterday or this or that. But I'm doing it instead of like just like a sketch with, just pen and paper. I'm doing it with like the most advanced, sophisticated, like 3D digital tools. Like, what could we do, commenting in a very, real time sort of time frame with the most advanced tools. Like, what could that look like? So that's what that's, sort of like where I'm at right now.
And you mentioned earlier about phoning at home. Like, are there ever times where, a better question I think would be, are you very self-critical about your work after the fact?
Yes, I'm very self-critical of the work after the fact. I would say probably 75% of nights, it's just like after I'm done, it's just like, ugh. And it usually goes like pretty close to midnight. And it's sort of like, almost every night, I would say, the majority of nights, it's just like, oh, God, that did not fucking turn out the way. Because a lot of times I'll have an idea and it's like, oh, man, this would be freaking sweet if I did this, and blah, blah, blah. I'll look at it at the end and it's like, yeah, that did not turn out how I wanted it to turn out. That's just like, the lighting looks like shit. Because again, I run out of time because it's got to be done by midnight. Not staying up till fucking 3 a.m. tweaking on this shit. It's got to be 100% done by midnight. So there's a very hard cutoff. So there's always like a million things where it's like, yeah, the values aren't how I wanted it, or this fucking composition just doesn't quite work like, how I wanted it, or this like element that was like, this was the whole idea. You can't even see it now, like, this or that. So I'm rarely like, the times where I'm like, oh, that turned out sweet, I feel like I just got lucky. Like, it's just like, wow, I just kind of got lucky there. Like, oh, that's not bad.
I think that's really cool to understand that. And do you think like the hard cutoff as well kind of is your saving grace in a lot of ways? Like
100%. I think people, and I'm going to put this on a t-shirt or something. I'm going to put it on something. This, I feel like, is my only good quote. I feel like people do not have a lack of ideas. They have a lack of deadlines. I think the more deadlines you have, the more it will force something out, and it will force something out that probably sucks, because most of your ideas are shit. But you have to get those shitty ideas out to get to the like few good ones. So I think the deadlines, and when I don't have a deadline, I just don't do shit. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't, I was working on a short film, and it was like a 2-minute fucking short film, and I worked on it for 4 years. And it's like, because I just didn't do it. Most of that time, it wasn't like I was working on it the whole time. I just wasn't fucking doing it. Because it was like, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to change this? And I would kind of, think about it a little bit. But then it was like, well, this is hard. I don't want to make any choices. And then I just fucking wouldn't make any choices. and then it just didn't fucking come out. And finally, when I had a deadline, then it got fucking finished. Long story, but sort of like something made a deadline, and then that it got done. So it forced me to make choices. So I very much feel like deadlines are super, super important for creatives.
Yeah, I think I always talk about Parkinson's law, like a task will shrink or stretch to match the finite amount of time that it has.
100%. 100%.
There's a phrase, plata or plomo, which is silver or lead, which I think is, for me, it's always like if you were to gun to your head to finish, that's going to force you to make the right decisions and get it done rather than having infinite freedom. Have you seen, there's a documentary on South Park, 6 Days to Air?
No, I'm not.
So I saw it years ago, but I watched it again recently, and I feel like this should be almost a weekly thing to watch. And it's just their creative process, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, for doing South Park, and which is why it's always so relevant what they're tackling, is that every Thursday they come in and they're going to figure out before the next Wednesday what they're doing for South Park. And it goes through this creative process where they're finally delivering usually 30 to 60 minutes before airtime. And it's crazy, but one thing that I got this time around watching it that I thought was so powerful was that, if they had a month to do it, it would take a month. But what would usually happen is it would cannibalize their creativity because they start to second guess themselves and start to rework things. And eventually they go backwards, not forwards.
It's definitely, I've only worked on a few feature films, and it was very much in the beginning, and I'm used to working most of a lot of the client work they do is concert visuals, and with concert visuals, there's no time for it's fucking, oh shit, we got a fucking national headlining stadium tour in 3 weeks, and we need, an hour of content. So it's just fucking there's not a lot of time for fucking around like that. But it was interesting in the concept work that I did for feature films, where it was just just a week would go by, and it's just wait, so you want me to spend an entire week just on this one frame? It's kind of on this one tiny concept. Okay, I mean, I can, but it was definitely just it felt like it was this seems like it could be moving faster. And then, towards the end, obviously fucking crunch time, people are sleeping under desks and blah, blah, blah. Cause it's well, now there's deadlines. Now there's a real deadline. So yeah, I definitely think, if you can impose deadlines on yourself, it will help you put out more work. And, I think it will help you put out more work. It might not be better, but it will definitely be more versus, and something is always better than nothing.